5 signs that you may be dealing with something darker than mere human malice. This is not about difficult personalities or ordinary toxic behavior. We are speaking of encounters where the visible masks hide invisible forces, where people carry a spiritual weight that is not their own. They appear ordinary, even charming, but deep within there is something corrosive, a hidden mission to drain what is light, holy, and true in you. And if these words are reaching you now, it is not an accident. Perhaps you have already crossed paths with such a person. Perhaps you have felt it, the strange heaviness in the air, the sudden unease in your chest, the way peace seemed to scatter like birds fleeing before a storm. These individuals do not need to look like the caricatures of cinema. They may not roar or rage. Often they smile, they offer kindness, they even appear spiritual. Yet their presence unsettles your spirit. Sometimes they know what they are doing. Other times they are simply vessels, willingly or unknowingly guided by shadows. Their aim is always the same: to poison what is pure, to fracture what is love, and to drain the life of those who still shine. That is why discernment is essential. There are always signs, and once you begin to see them, you cannot unsee them. The first sign is subtle yet unmistakable. You feel drained in their presence. Not the usual tiredness of a long day, but a soul-level exhaustion. You may wake in the morning with strength, joy, and gratitude, only to find, after a brief encounter with them, that all has evaporated. Your body feels heavy, your thoughts clouded, your heart restless. And yet, if you recall the interaction, nothing obvious happened. They did not shout. They were not openly aggressive. Perhaps they even spoke gently, even smiling. And yet each word, each glance, each pause seemed to pull something vital from you. Only when they depart do you realize how utterly empty you have become. This is not ordinary negativity. This is spiritual theft. These people feed on your peace, your hope, your light. They are like vampires, but instead of teeth, they use words, gestures, subtle looks, and even silence. They disguise it as humor, concern, even spiritual advice. But beneath it all lies one purpose: to cut you off from what connects you to God, to sap your joy, your faith, your courage, until you no longer have strength to dream or to believe. If you do not discern it early, you will find yourself not simply weary, but detached from the very sources of life. The second sign is more insidious. They make you doubt your own mind. They do not lie only to deceive. They lie to dominate your perception of reality. They wound you with words, but when you protest, they twist it. I never said that. You are exaggerating. You are too sensitive. They injure, and then they accuse you of weakness for feeling pain. Slowly, subtly, you begin to mistrust your own memory, your own judgment, your own sanity. And this is no accident. It is a strategy. Their goal is to become the loudest voice in your head, to rewrite reality until your eyes see only what they permit. Before long, you are apologizing for wounds they inflicted. You are carrying guilt that never belonged to you. You begin to think perhaps you are the one at fault. Perhaps your perception is flawed. And they watch quietly with the faintest smile as you unravel. Do you recognize the pattern? It is ancient. From the very beginning, the serpent twisted words to fracture trust in God's truth. Genesis tells us she was the most cunning of all, and that cunning still lives today, whispered through human lips that appear so very ordinary. The third sign is the sabotage of your dreams. You know that fire that rises in your chest when you sense a new calling, when a fresh vision fills you with joy. These people cannot stand to see it. They do not strike it down openly, but they chip at it little by little. They clothe their poison in care. Are you sure this is wise? Maybe you are being selfish. I just don't want you to be disappointed. But it is not about protecting you. It is about binding you. They feel threatened by your growth, disturbed by your light. To them, your rising is their diminishing, and so they prefer to keep you small, safe, controlled. This is how the enemy works. Not always with direct destruction, but with subtle whispers that cool your fire until you no longer burn. One day you awake and realize your dream no longer excites you, not because God withdrew it, but because the voices around you smothered it. And all the while, you thought they were protecting you, when in fact they were shackling you. So listen carefully. The battle is not always outside. Sometimes it enters through the faces you thought were allies, the voices you thought were kind. The first 3 signs are clear being drained of your life force, being confused into doubting your own mind, and being slowly robbed of your dreams. These are not accidents, they are patterns. And patterns reveal presence. The 4th sign is perhaps one of the most disturbing. They thrive on chaos and hide within confusion. Where the Spirit of God brings peace and clarity, these people stir storms and ignite fires. Some individuals seem to exist only to provoke disorder, to light emotional fires, and then stand back, feigning innocence as everything burns around them. They argue over trivial matters, twist your words, and push you to the very edge. And when at last you react in exasperation, they play the victim, pointing fingers and calling you unstable. Do you recognize the pattern? They pit people against each other, whispering here, provoking there, until friends turn suspicious and communities fracture. Then, like actors slipping backstage, they step aside as though they were merely bystanders. But make no mistake, confusion is their chosen weapon. They need chaos to reign, because where there is order and clarity, their control dissolves. Have you noticed that when they are around, something is always wrong? Someone is always angry, offended, or close to breaking. And if ever calm lingers too long, they manufacture a crisis from nothing. They invent quarrels, stir tempests out of silence, create problems simply so that harmony never has the chance to flourish. And when you try to address things directly, with honesty and firmness, they twist, dramatize, and collapse into self-pity until you question whether you are the one who is unreasonable. Hear this truth. You are not the problem. The turmoil is not coincidence, it is strategy. The fog of confusion is meant to exhaust you, to drain your energy until you have no strength to pray, no space to hear God, no clarity to discern His voice. Because a weary and bewildered soul is easier to control. And that is exactly their aim. The 5th sign is even more dangerous. They undermine your relationships and slowly isolate you. Unlike open enemies, they do not attack your foundations head-on. They chip away gradually, planting doubts with a soft tone and a mask of concern. Are you sure your closest friend truly likes you? I think your brother is behaving strangely, don't you? That leader of yours seems false. Be careful. Words spoken not with outright malice, but wrapped in the pretense of care. Yet each phrase is a seed of suspicion. They use secrets as weapons, speak behind backs under the guise of honesty, and little by little, they fracture the bonds of trust that hold you steady: family, friendships, even the church community. None are spared. By the time you begin to notice, your circle is riddled with cracks, and tension flows where love once reigned. And who stands beside you through it all? They do, until their voice becomes the only one you hear. Isolation is their cruelest tactic. It mirrors the predator's method. A wolf does not attack the flock at once. It singles out one sheep, leading it away, weakening it with distance. Alone, that sheep is vulnerable and easily devoured. So it is with the enemy. Once you are cut off from healthy relationships, your emotional clarity weakens, your spiritual discernment falters, and you begin to depend on the very one who ensnared you. But hear me, you were never created to live in isolation. From the beginning, God declared, "It is not good for man to be alone." Christ Himself formed the church so that believers would be supported, corrected, and uplifted by one another. The enemy knows this, which is why he works so tirelessly to divide, to sever, to isolate. Because a believer surrounded by true fellowship is dangerous to darkness, but a believer cornered in loneliness is easy prey. Do not fall for the disguise of concern that poisons your connections. Do not believe the whispers that sow suspicion against those who love you. Discern the difference between constructive correction and manipulative sabotage. One builds your faith, the other erodes it. One draws you nearer to God's truth, the other distances you from His people. The wolf hides beneath smiles, beneath supposed care, beneath friendly words that corrode slowly like rust on iron. But you have the Spirit of God within you, and He gives discernment to recognize when words are not born of love but of deception. Ask Him to open your eyes, and He will. The fourth and fifth signs are unmistakable once revealed. Those who thrive on confusion expose themselves by their constant storms. Those who isolate you reveal themselves by the fractures they sow. Recognize the strategy for what it is, not merely human weakness, but spiritual schemes designed to pull you from light into shadow. Ecclesiastes 4:12 reminds us with sobering clarity. Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves, and a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. The enemy knows this, which is why these people seek to cut your cord of strength. They want you isolated, convinced that the only voice you can trust is theirs, the very voice destroying you. This is no longer simply about a toxic relationship. It is an assault on your soul, a calculated attempt to sever you from your identity, your mission, and your bond with the body of Christ. Anything that tries to pull you away from these pillars does not come from God. So, what do you do if you recognize these patterns in your life? The first step is simple but profound. Trust what your spirit discerns, not merely what your eyes observe. The Spirit of God was placed within you for a reason. You may lack tangible proof. The person may appear kind, generous, even spiritual. But if every time you are near them, you feel a weight on your chest, an unshakable confusion, or a quiet alarm ringing in your soul, take it seriously. That is not paranoia. It is discernment. God often whispers in silence, but the enemy shouts to distract. Jesus Himself warned in Matthew 10:16, "Be as shrewd as serpents and as innocent as doves." Discern beyond the mask, because wolves often come dressed in wool. The second step is to establish boundaries and keep them. Controlling people despise boundaries, because a boundary prevents their manipulation. The moment you say no, expect resistance. They will accuse you of changing, of being cold, ungrateful, insensitive. They will twist your refusal into betrayal. But that reaction is itself confirmation that the boundary is necessary. Remember how often Jesus withdrew from the crowds, and even from His closest disciples, to protect His spirit and recharge in prayer. If the sinless Son of God guarded His strength through distance, why do we imagine we can survive without it? The third step may be the most difficult. If necessary, cut the ties. Do it without guilt. It may wound. It may leave you trembling. And yes, they may try to smear your name. But sometimes the first breath of freedom comes only when you finally step away. Paul warned in 2 Timothy 3-5 of those who carry an appearance of godliness, but deny its power. His instruction was not stay and try to change them. His command was clear. Have nothing to do with such people. Your soul is not owed to anyone. You are not called to sacrifice your destiny for the comfort of those who oppose God's work in you. The fourth step is to draw near to the light. Once you cut ties with what drains you, it is time to reconnect with what nourishes you. Seek those who pray with you, who lift you up, who do not siphon your joy, but fill your life with peace. Surrounding yourself with a healthy, God-centered community is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is the safe shelter in the storm, the wall of strength when the winds of confusion blow. When you walk with those who carry the Spirit, their very presence reminds you that joy is sacred, that hope is holy, and that life is a gift. Darkness despises such light because light exposes. That is why the enemy tries so desperately to drag you into isolation. The cure is simple. Remain close to the light at all times. The fifth step is to restore the voice of God in your heart. Perhaps the most devastating consequence of these encounters is how they dull or even silence the divine whisper within. Where once you could hear God clearly in prayer, in scripture, in stillness, now their voice shouts louder than his. But God's voice has not disappeared. It only waits for you to turn down the noise. Create intentional moments of stillness. Open the Word, not as a duty, but as a lifeline. Pray not as a last resort, but as a first response. Even if at first all you can say is, "Lord, speak, I am listening." Keep saying it until your inner ear awakens again. This restoration is more than practice. It is warfare. Because every time you silence the deceiving voice and incline your ear to God's truth, you declare that you belong to Him and Him alone. The enemy wants to drown out his whisper with chaos, suspicion, and lies. But every time you seek His voice, you push back the darkness. So remember these steps clearly. Trust the discernment of your spirit. Guard yourself with boundaries. Cut ties when necessary. Draw near to life-giving community, and above all, restore the voice of God within you. None of these are acts of coldness. They are acts of faith. They are acts of survival. And most importantly, they are acts of obedience. There comes a moment when the silence of your prayers, the heaviness in your chest, and the fading of your dreams seem to convince you that perhaps you are unloved, unseen, or forgotten. That is exactly the lie the enemy longs for you to embrace, that you must constantly prove your worth. That love must be earned through usefulness or submission. But listen closely. God has never stopped speaking to you. Even in the chaos, even when exhaustion clouded your soul, even in the ache of betrayal, His whisper has remained constant. And now His voice is calling louder, summoning you back into His presence, reminding you that He never left. Allow Him to heal the dreams that were broken, to rebuild the trust that was stolen, and to rename you with the identity He wrote before time began. You are not the labels thrown at you in malice. You are not the sum of manipulations, failures, or wounds. You are who He says you are: chosen, beloved, redeemed. And with that recognition comes the most decisive step: to reclaim what the enemy tried to steal. For manipulative people do not simply seek to unsettle your days. They come to distort your very vision of God, of yourself, and of your purpose. But here is the truth they cannot erase. You have never been powerless. The greatest fear of darkness is the moment when a child of God awakens to their authority. In Luke 10:19, Jesus declares, "I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you." These are not poetic words. They are a legal decree in the courts of heaven. You carry divine authority to reject lies, to renounce manipulation, and to proclaim truth over your life. You need no one's permission to walk away from what destroys you. Do not fall into the illusion that peace is found in silence and compliance. That is not peace. That is captivity dressed in politeness. True peace flows from alignment with the Spirit of God, not from appeasing those intent on breaking you. You were created to reign with Christ, not to live enslaved to the control of another. The battle was never about mere survival. It has always been about transformation, about becoming more resilient, more radiant, more deeply anchored in God's truth. So release the illusions that hold you. Release the fantasy that they will one day change if you endure long enough. Release the need to explain yourself, to defend yourself, or to carry guilt for not seeing earlier what God is showing you now. You were never meant to bear the weight of something birthed in darkness. Freedom is not found in excuses. It is found in letting go. Take back what is yours, the joy, the clarity, the intimacy with God that no manipulator can touch unless you surrender it. Understand this too. No one leaves a spiritual battle untouched. Pretending nothing happened is not healing. You must allow God to restore you, to lead you step by step, to teach you how to breathe again. The Holy Spirit longs to guide you, not just out of the valley, but into a place of renewal. Each scar can become a testimony, each wound a window through which His light shines. Return daily to His presence. Make room again for the only voice that matters. Silence the noise, shut the door, lay your burdens down, and whisper simply, "Father, I am here, speak." And He will. Isaiah 30-21 promises, "Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, 'This is the way. Walk in it.' That voice will never manipulate or degrade you. It will correct, yes, but always with tenderness, always with the aim of restoring what is broken and breathing life where despair once ruled. Let Him touch the hidden places of your soul, the wounds invisible to others, yet sharp enough to shape your days. Spiritual abuse leaves marks no one else can see, but God sees them, and He desires to heal them. It is all right if trust takes time to rebuild, if prayer feels fragile at first, if hope seems slow to return. Healing itself is holy. Speak to Him as you are, not as you think you should be. Tell Him of your fear, your anger, your longing, even your confusion. He already knows, but He waits for your surrender, not to condemn, but to restore. Psalm 34-18 declares, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Let Him draw near. Let Him sanctify the path ahead. And as you heal, remember, your future is not defined by the schemes of those who wounded you. It is defined by the One who calls you His own. So step into the light again. Reclaim your voice. Guard your spirit. And above all, anchor yourself in His presence. Because in the end, what the world needs is not more empty phrases or hollow rituals. It needs witnesses, men and women, whose tongues are set ablaze by heaven, whose words and lives echo the voice of Christ Himself. If this message has stirred your heart, share in the comments which chain you are ready to break, which lie you are ready to release, which truth of God you are ready to embrace. Let us walk together as children of light, standing in authority, living in freedom, and proclaiming with boldness, Jesus is Lord.